The fork clattered against the china plate like a gunshot in the quiet room, my hand trembling as I stared at the man across the table. His eyes, those piercing blue eyes, locked on mine with a recognition that twisted my gut. "You look just like him," he whispered, his voice cracking the air like thunder before a storm, while my wife squeezed my knee under the table, her nails digging in like she sensed the fracture line already spiderwebbing through our perfect evening. In that split second, the laughter from my teenage daughter froze, and my mother's wine glass hovered midair, her lips parting in a silent gasp that echoed the secret she'd buried deeper than any grave. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself as I wiped the sweat from my brow in our cramped kitchen in suburban Chicago, the kind of place where white picket fences hid more than they revealed. I'm Jack Harlan, 42, a high school history teacher who spent his life chasing the American dream. Steady job, mortgage paid on time, 2 kids who still hugged me goodnight. My wife, Sarah, was the real anchor. Blonde hair tied back in a practical ponytail, her laugh like wind chimes on a summer porch. We'd been married 18 years, weathering the storms of parenthood and my occasional wanderings into what-if territory, those late-night doubts about legacy and loss. But family? That was our North Star, or so I thought. The invitation had been Sarah's idea, born from one of those progressive podcasts she devoured while folding laundry. "We need to show the kids what openness looks like," she'd said, her eyes sparkling with that missionary zeal she got about social justice. Our neighbors, Ethan and Marcus, had just moved in next door. A gay couple in their late 50s, the first in our cul-de-sac of cookie-cutter colonials. Ethan was the quiet one, a retired architect with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like a kindly professor. Marcus, his husband of 25 years, was the spark, broad-shouldered, with a booming laugh and stories from his days as a Broadway understudy that could light up a room. They waved from their porch swing most mornings, Ethan sketching birdhouses while Marcus tended roses that bloomed brighter than anything in our yard. "Why not dinner?" Sarah had pressed, and I'd caved because, hell, in 2025 America, who turns down a chance to virtue signal without leaving the driveway? Plus, my mom, Evelyn, was visiting from Florida, 82, sharp as a tack but fragile since Dad's passing 5 years back. Heart attack, they said, but she'd always whispered it was something deeper, her voice trailing off like smoke. Inviting Ethan and Marcus felt like a bridge, a way to honor the inclusivity Dad would have preached if he'd been around. He was the one who'd marched in the 60s, taught me to question the status quo over backyard barbecues. Or at least that's the version of him I carried. The kids were on board in their Gen Z way. Lily, 16, with her purple-streaked hair and endless TikToks, thought it was iconic. Ben, 14, shrugged but helped set the table, muttering about how it's just food, Dad. We went all out. Sarah's famous pot roast simmering with carrots and thyme, mashed potatoes whipped creamy, a pecan pie cooling on the windowsill. The dining room glowed under the chandelier we'd splurged on after Ben's bar mitzvah. Ironic, since Dad had been the lapsed Catholic who'd skipped the whole thing. As the doorbell chimed at 7 sharp, I smoothed my button down and muttered a prayer for normalcy. Ethan and Marcus arrived with a bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet and a bouquet of wildflowers that Marcus thrust into Sarah's arms like a suitor. "For the hostess with the mostess," he winked, his Texas drawl wrapping around the words like honey. Hugs all around, the kids hovering politely, Mom rising from her armchair with that regal poise she'd never lost. We settled in, the clink of glasses toasting new friends, the air thick with the scent of rosemary and possibility. Conversation flowed easy at first, Ethan's blueprints for a community center downtown, Marcus's tales of dodging homophobes in 80s New York. Lily peppered them with questions about pride parades. Ben nodded along, sneaking glances at his phone. Then, midway through the roast, as Sarah passed the gravy boat, Mom leaned forward, her eyes lingering on Ethan a beat too long. "You remind me of someone," she said softly, her Florida tan not quite hiding the flush creeping up her neck. Ethan smiled politely, but Marcus, ever the performer, tilted his head. "Funny you say that, Evelyn. Jack here has the same jawline. Runs in the family, I suppose." Laughter rippled, but it landed flat, like a punchline no one got. I shifted in my seat, fork spearing a potato, chalking it up to wine-fueled nostalgia. But Ethan's gaze hadn't left mine. It was subtle at first. A flicker when I mentioned Dad's old Vietnam stories, the way he'd come home changed, quieter. "Your father was in Nam?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but laced with something I couldn't place. "Yeah, drafted right out of college. Never talked much about it, but it hardened him." Marcus chuckled, but it was forced. "War does that. Strips away the illusions." Mom's fork paused again, and Sarah, bless her, steered us to dessert, slicing pie with surgical precision. As plates cleared, the kids excused themselves, Lily to a Zoom with friends, Ben to Fortnite. The adults lingered over coffee, the room settling into that post-meal haze where truths slip out unbidden. Marcus launched into a story about their wedding in San Francisco, the one they'd postponed for years after Prop 8, finally tying the knot under rainbow flags in 2015. Ethan cried more than I did, he teased, squeezing his husband's hand. Sarah beamed, raising her mug. "To love that endures." We clinked, but Ethan's eyes were on Mom now, soft and searching. "Evelyn, you ever been to the Castro? It's a world unto itself." Mom's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. "Once, long ago, with a friend." The word hung, heavy as lead. I laughed it off. Mom's full of surprises. But the air thickened, charged like the moments before a Midwest twister. Ethan set his cup down deliberately. "Jack," he said, turning to me, "there's something you should know about your father, about us." My heart stuttered. Sarah's hand found mine again, colder this time. Mom's face drained of color, her napkin twisting in her lap like a noose. And that's when it cracked open. The evening, our family, the fragile myth of who we'd been. The words hung there, suspended like the smoke from Dad's old pipe that Mom still kept on the mantel, a relic from a life she polished but never questioned. Ethan's voice was low, measured, the architect in him building each syllable with care. "We met your father in '72, right after he got back from Nam. Chicago was a powder keg then. Protests, unions, folks fighting for scraps of dignity." I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, my mind racing to connect dots that had never dotted my map. 72, that was the year Dad started his job at the steel mill, the one that bent his back and soured his smiles. Mom had been pregnant with me, glowing through morning sickness and factory shifts. Sarah's grip tightened. "Met how?" she asked, her journalist's instinct kicking in. She wrote features for the local paper, always sniffing out the untold. Marcus glanced at Ethan, a silent nod passing between them like a rehearsed cue. "We were part of a group," Ethan continued, his glasses catching the lamplight. "Veterans against the war. Coffee clatches in basements, passing pamphlets under diner tables. Your dad showed up one night, still in his fatigues, looking like he'd seen the devil and brought him home. Laughter again, but mine was hollow. I pictured it. Dad, 25, broad as a barn door, slipping into that smoky room off Halsted Street, the air thick with reefer and rebellion. Mom hadn't spoken, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth's faded floral pattern, tracing threads like lifelines. "He was searching," she murmured finally, so quiet I almost missed it, "for something the war took." Ethan's nod was gentle. "We all were, and that's how we found each other, me, Marcus, a few others. Brothers in arms, you might say." The word brothers landed soft, but it stirred something uneasy in my chest, a ripple like lake water disturbed by a stone. I'd grown up on stories of Dad's mill buddies, the guys who'd share beers and bad jokes, but never this, a circle of vets bearing souls in the shadows. Marcus picked up the thread, his drawl warming the chill. "Your old man had fire, Jack. Quoted Whitman like scripture, talked about the body electric when the rest of us just wanted to forget the napalm stink." He paused, sipping coffee black as midnight. "We'd meet at this dive-off division, Leo's gone now, but it had a jukebox that played Dylan on loop. One night, after a rally turned ugly with cops, we ended up at my apartment, just talking, really, stripping down the lies we'd worn like dog tags. Sarah shifted beside me, her foot brushing mine. I anchor in the swell. The kids' voices filtered from upstairs. Lily's giggle cutting the tension like a knife through fog. I wanted to laugh it off, call it ancient history. But Ethan's eyes held mine, steady as a compass. What does this have to do with dinner? I asked, sharper than intended. Mom flinched. Ethan exhaled slow. Everything. Because those nights, they weren't just talk. The room tilted, or maybe it was the wine catching up. I flashed to Dad's old photo albums, the ones tucked in the attic. Him and Mom at prom, stiff in tux and taffeta. Him holding me as a toddler on the lakefront, wind whipping his hair. No hints of basements or jukeboxes, no shadows in his grin. But there were gaps. Summers he worked overtime. Holidays he'd vanish for a weekend, hunting with the boys. Mom had filled them with shrugs. Her love a bandage over questions unasked. Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to confessional timbre. We fell into something, your dad and I. Not planned, just inevitable. The war had hollowed us out. And in that hollow we found echo. My throat closed. Echo? Like what? A fling? A phase? America in the 70s was thawing. Sure. Stonewall echoes, disco beats. But for a straight-laced vet from the heartland? Sarah's whisper cut through. An affair. Ethan shook his head. Not denial but deflection. Call it what you will. It was love, raw and real. In a time when loving like that could get you killed. Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wet prisms. It was a mistake, she said, voice like cracked porcelain. A detour. But Ethan reached across, his hand hovering near hers, not touching. Evelyn, you knew. That night in the hospital, when he came back from the doctor. She pulled away, the chair scraping like a scream. I stood then, abrupt, the blood roaring in my ears. Knew what? Mom, what the hell is this? The front door rattled, wind or fate knocking twice. Sarah rose too, her arm around Mom's shoulders, murmuring comforts. Marcus stood back, hands open, the performer yielding the stage. Ethan remained seated, his face a map of regrets etched deep. Jack, sit, please. Your father's truth. It's yours now too. I didn't sit. I paced to the window, staring at the neighbor's porch light flickering like a Morse code warning. Outside, the cul-de-sac slept under sodium glow, oblivious to the bomb ticking in my dining room. Upstairs, Ben called down. Dad, everything okay? Fine, buddy. I lied, the word tasting like ash. But nothing was fine. The pie sat half-eaten, crumbs like confetti from a party crashed. Sarah met my eyes, her question unspoken. Who are we now? Mom wept silently, shoulders shaking. The woman who'd raised me on bootstraps and Bible verses unraveling thread by thread. Ethan's voice pulled me back. It ended when you were born, Jack. He chose family, the mill, the mortgage, the life society handed him. But it cost him. And us. Cost. The word echoed Dad's last year. The whiskey bottles hidden in the garage. The way he'd stare at the TV like it held answers in the static. Heart attack, the coroner said. But what if it was a broken one all along? I sank into my chair, the wood groaning surrender. Tell me everything? I whispered, the hook sinking deeper. And as the clock ticked past 10, the stories poured out. Nights in hidden bars, stolen kisses in alley shadows. A love coded in glances across protest lines. Marcus wove in the humor, the close calls with raids. Ethan the ache, the letters burned in fireplaces. Mom interjected sparingly, her confessions clipped. I suspected, turned a blind eye. For you, Jack. For us. By midnight, the Cabernet bottle wept red rings on the oak, and the revelation loomed. Not yet fully birthed but kicking hard. Betrayal? Yes, from Dad's silence, from Mom's complicity, from the years I'd idolized a ghost. But beneath it, a romance I'd never imagined, tender as autumn leaves, fierce as a gale off Lake Michigan. As Ethan and Marcus gathered their coats, promising more tomorrow, I hugged them. Awkward. Real. Strangers no more. Sarah locked the door behind them, then turned to me, her face a canvas of questions. "What now?" she asked. I pulled her close, Mom shuffling to bed with a pill and a prayer. "We rebuild," I said. But the word felt foreign, like a language half-remembered. That night, sleep evaded, dreams tangled with jukebox tunes and fatigues. Dad's shadow stretching long across the heartland. Morning broke gray, coffee brewing like a truce. The kids sensed the shift. Lily's questions probing, Ben's silence brooding. Mom stared out at the roses Marcus had planted, their petals bruised by frost. And me? I drove to the old neighborhood. Leo's ghost site now a parking lot. The wind whispering what-ifs. The truth had cracked us open. But in the fissure, light seeped. Human, messy, alive. The days blurred after that dinner. A Chicago autumn smearing into sleet-streaked windows and bare branches clawing the sky. School dragged. My lectures on the civil rights era now laced with unintended irony. King's dream clashing against Dad's hidden marches. Sarah threw herself into articles on queer history, her typewriter clacking late into nights, while I paced the attic, unearthing boxes of Dad's war relics. Dog tags etched with his name, a journal half filled with sketches of Saigon alleys and cryptic notes. Midnight, the blue door. Ethan something? My stomach nodded each time. We met again. The six of us, Ethan, Marcus, Mom, Sarah, even the kids, who absorbed it with wide-eyed fascination. Over takeout pizza in their Craftsman next door, the stories deepened. Ethan showed faded Polaroids. Dad in a V-neck sweater, arms slung casual around Marcus at a lake picnic. The three of them at a folk concert, faces flushed with beer and belonging. "He was our North Star," Marcus said, passing the box of photos like contraband. Lily traced one with her finger. "Grandpa was. Bye." The word hung, modern and merciful. Ethan nodded. Before labels stuck. He loved deeply, without borders. Mom softened in those sessions, her armor cracking. "I met him post-rally," she confessed one evening, nursing tea in their sunroom. "Knew from the start he carried storms. But I thought I could weather them." Regret shadowed her eyes, not for the love, but the silence it demanded. Sarah listened, her hand on mine, bridging the gap. Ben, usually glued to screens, sketched cartoons. Dad as a superhero cape swirling with rainbows. Laughter crept in, tentative, healing the raw edges. But conflict brewed, dark as the ale Dad favored. It surfaced a week later, when I cornered Mom in the kitchen, flour dusted from pie crusts. Why hide it? All these years. Her hands stilled, rolling pin hovering. Shame, Jack, not his mine. In 72, being the wife of that, it would have gutted us. The church, the neighbors, your future. Her voice broke. I chose survival. Anger flared hot. At what cost? He died alone in that garage, bottle in hand. She recoiled, tears carving tracks through flour. And I died with him, every unspoken night. Sarah mediated, her calm a lighthouse. This isn't blame, it's understanding. But the betrayal festered. In me, toward Dad's ghost for the pedestal I'd built on half-truths. Toward Mom for the veil she'd drawn. I drove aimless loops around the loop, jazz on the radio echoing Marcus's tales, questioning my own compass. Was my life an echo of his steady facade over unspoken longings? No, I told myself, kissing Sarah fiercer that night, but doubt whispered like wind through cracks. The climax hit like a nor'easter, unannounced on a Tuesday eve. Ethan called, voice tight, "Come over, now." We piled into the minivan, me, Sarah, Mom, kids at youth group. Their living room smelled of sage and sorrow, candles guttering on the coffee table. Marcus paced, face ashen. Ethan clutched a manila envelope, edges frayed. "We found this in your dad's things," he said, sliding it across. After he passed, we helped Evelyn sort. She asked us to wait. Mom gasped, hand to mouth. Inside, letters, a dozen, yellowed and tied with twine. Dad's scrawl to Ethan. "My dearest E. The mill chains me, but you free me. In dreams, we're endless road tripping Route 66. No maps, just us." Passion poured off the pages. Poetic, aching. a love starved and sublime. One dated 75, post my birth. Jack's eyes, yours, a piece of you in him. My vision blurred. The room spun. You. What? The words choked out. Ethan met my gaze steady. We're brothers, Jack. Half. Your dad and I. It wasn't just nights. There was a clinic in 73 anonymous donors. He wanted a child. Our bridge to the world. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Mom sobbed openly. Betrayal crashed. Not just Dad's secret life, but blood? Ethan, the quiet neighbor, my kin? Marcus knelt beside him. He never told us your name till years later. Protected you all. Rage boiled over. Protected? He erased you. Us. I stormed out, slamming their door, sleet stinging my face as I ran home. Inside, I upended the attic box, photos scattering like shrapnel. Dad's grin mocking now, complicit. Sarah found me there, curled amid debris. He's gone, Jack. But this? It's a gift. Gift? It felt like theft. My identity rewritten in ink and silence. Mom arrived later, envelope clutched like a shield. I knew, she whispered, kneeling beside me. The eyes, the dimple. But he begged, let Jack have normal. We wept then, a dam breaking, her apologies mingling with mine for the years stolen. Betrayal's blade twisted deep, carving out illusions. The hero father, the steadfast home. Yet in the wound, empathy bloomed, Dad's torment, choosing compartments in an era of closets. Ethan called at dawn, voice raw. I'm sorry. For the timing, the shock. I drove over, sun-piercing clouds like hesitant grace. We sat on their porch swing, coffee steaming between us. Why now? I asked. Because life's short, and you deserve the full map. Marcus joined, arms around us both, a triad mending. Not easy. Awkward hugs, stilted calls. But seeds of family, unconventional, rooted. The kids adapted quickest. Lily organized a truth night, sharing essays on identity. Ben drew a family tree branching wild. Sarah's article, anonymized, ran in the Trib. Uncloseting legacy. One son's reckoning. Responses flooded, stories mirroring ours. A chorus of hidden loves surfacing. But the real storm raged internal. Holidays loomed, Thanksgiving a minefield. Did we invite Ethan and Marcus? Pretend normalcy? Mom decided. Full table, all truths welcome. As turkey roasted, tension simmered. My uncle's side-eye, old prejudices bubbling. Yet when Ethan carved the bird, knife steady, laughter followed. Toasts rang. To Dad, the dreamer. To love, unlabeled. Still, doubt lingered, a shadow at edges. Was this wholeness or just another layer? In quiet moments, I traced Dad's letters, his words a balm. Love isn't finite. It multiplies. Romantic, yes. Their stolen summers, hands clasped under stars. Human, profoundly, the cost of concealment, the courage in confession. Winter deepened, snow blanketing sins. We skated on the frozen pond, Ethan teaching Ben spins, Marcus twirling Lily. Mom and Sarah skied doubles, giggles echoing. I watched, heart swelling, fractured but fuller. The betrayal? Scarred, but scars toughen. And in its wake, romance anew. Sarah and I, rediscovering whispers. A family expanding, borders blurred. Yet climaxes echo warned. Truths reshape, but don't erase. One night, alone with Ethan's photo, Dad's arm around him, young and fierce, I whispered, forgive. Wind answered, soft as absolution. Spring thawed the heartland slow, daffodils pushing through frost like stubborn hopes, mirroring the tentative bloom in our lives. The revelation had reshaped us. Not shattered, but reforged, edges jagged but stronger. Ethan and Marcus wove in seamless now. Sunday brunches with quiches and queer lore, Ethan tutoring Ben in drafting dreams of skyscrapers, Marcus directing Lily's school play, a reimagined Our Town with fluid loves. Mom relocated north, trading condos for our spare room, her stories filling silences with color. Your dad wanted this, she'd say, eyes misty. A legacy unbroken. But healing's path twisted, as all do. Conflict reignited in summer's heat. A phone call from Aunt Clara, Dad's sister, the family archivist with her scrapbooks and suspicions. Heard whispers, she drawled from Milwaukee, voice syrup thick with judgment. That dinner nonsense, folks talking. What are you dragging his name through? I gripped the receiver, pulse hammering. Truth, Aunt C. The man you sainted had layers. She huffed. Layers? Sin, you mean? Church don't bend. The line went dead, but her words lingered, venom in the veins. Family reunion that July, Wisconsin Lake House, annual ritual of walleye fries and water skis, loomed like a gauntlet. Sarah packed with purpose. We show them, not tell. Kids armed with facts, Mom with resolve. Ethan and Marcus? Invited, of course. No half measures, I said, kissing Sarah's temple. Drive Up was soundtrack of Motown. Dad's favorites, windows down, wind whipping doubts. The cabin squatted lakeside, pine-scented and memory-soaked. Cousins mobbed the kids. Uncles grilled brats with beer-fueled yarns. Aunt Clara held court on the deck, her perm unyielding as her creed. When we arrived with Ethan and Marcus, coolers in hand, smiles wide, conversation dipped, forks pausing midair. New friends, Uncle Ray boomed, oblivious. Clara's eyes narrowed on Ethan. Remind me? Introductions crackled. Family, actually, Marcus quipped, clapping my shoulder. Gasps rippled. Clara's face soured. Family how? Mom stepped forward, voice steel. Blood and choice. Jack's half-brother, Ethan, and his husband, Marcus. Dad's loves. The deck froze, crickets amplifying the hush. Ray choked on his brew. Cousins exchanged glances. Clara rose, napkin crumpling. Evelyn Harlan, what devil's this? Your Harold. Was human. Mom cut in, chin high. Loved fiercely. Fought for rights you take for granted. Ethan added soft. Aunt Clara, he spoke of you fondly. The sister who baked his favorites. Disarmament. Subtle. But Clara wasn't yielding. Bible says love thy neighbor, Sarah interjected, her reporter's poise unflinching. These men were that to him, to us. Tension coiled, a spring wound tight. Lily, bold as brass, pulled out her phone. Clips of pride, stats on queer vets' suicides. Grandpa saved lives, including his own, by loving true. Ben nodded, quiet fire. Coolest legacy ever. Clara wavered, glancing at faded photos pinned to the fridge. Dad hoisting her on shoulders, kid-sized. He never said. Voice trailed, fracture visible. Marcus, master of moments, struck up guitars by the fire pit. Folk tunes Dad hummed, voices joining hesitant. Ethan beside me murmured. Brave kid, your old man. Chose silence to shield you. I squeezed his arm. And you? Chose waiting. Brotherhood bloomed there, under stars pricking the dusk. Not all mended that night. Clara left early, frost in her wake, whispers trailing like smoke. But seeds planted. A cousin's quiet, I'm gay too. Tearful by the dock. Ray's gruff, past the beans, brother-in-law. Betrayal's ghost hovered, family's judgment echoing Dad's era. But romance countered. In laughter shared, hands linked across divides. Back home, autumn gilded the changes. I taught a unit on hidden histories, Stonewall to Obergefell, kids debating with fire. Sarah's book deal landed. Echoes of the Closet. Our story anonymized. Proceeds to vet charities. Mom gardened with Marcus. Roses thriving in tandem. Ethan and I road-tripped Route 66 fragments. Dad's dream. Campfires crackling confessions. Regret the hiding? I asked, embers glowing. Every day. But not the love. His smile, Dad's dimple. You? Grateful, I said. For the map. Emotions deepened. Sarah and I renewed vows lakeside, intimate with Ethan officiating, vows to truth to layers. Kids thrived, Lily out as bi, Ben ally fierce. Humanistic threads wove. No perfection, just progress, flaws forgiven. Climax's scar faded to story, the dinner a pivot point. One eve, full table again, pot roast redux we toasted. To truths that change, Sarah said. Glasses chimed, echoes of that first clatter. No more ghosts, just us expanded, enduring. Years folded forward. Mom passed gentle at 90, surrounded, Ethan holding her hand, Marcus singing hymns. Dad's letters framed in our hall, words a beacon. I grade teaching, Sarah editing, kids launching, Lily to NYU theater, Ben to architecture school, Ethan's alma. Ethan and Marcus retired to a cabin up north. Visits frequent, our circle unbroken. In quiet, I ponder the hook. That forks fall, the whisper, you look just like him. It unraveled myths, yes, betrayals sting sharp. But romance redeemed. Dad's love, vast as prairies. Ethan's patience, a quiet heroism. Family's embrace, hard one. Human, profoundly, not fairy tale, but real as rain on tin roofs. America's promise, flawed, but fertile. In our corner of it, a gay couple's dinner birthed not fracture, but fusion. A legacy of love, unlabeled, unending. And in that, grace. For the hidden, the revealed, the forever changed.